Good Sunday morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another Southern Oregon Weather Weekend Update. We'll start with the final review of the month of August, then discuss our smoke outlook, our 7-day forecast, and then conclude with the latest thoughts for September and our fall analogs. So first, this is what the departure from normal temperature looked like for the month of August. In general, it was warm in the west and cool in the east. However, we weren't expecting a significantly warmer than normal month. We thought that it would turn out to be near normal, and you can see over much of the west side of Oregon, it was 2 to 4 degrees above normal, so not significantly hotter. However, we did have some warmer days that skewed this a little higher. Much of this warming was higher overnight lows than normal, and that's partially attributable to climate change, because during the nighttime you have less outgoing long-wave radiation escaping from the top of the atmosphere, so there's more of a heat trapping effect during the nighttime, whereas during the daytime, incoming shortwave radiation from the sun hasn't really changed very much. So we can see that even played out here during the month of August. This just shows temperature as a whole during the day and night, but if we were to break these maps down into daytime and nighttime, we'd see that it was warmer than average during the night by about 4 to 6 degrees, and it was actually closer to average, maybe just 1 degree warmer than average during the daytime during the month. So interesting to see that effect of climate change playing out here during the month of August in our area of the world. Also, this lined up very well with climatology, so the conditions that we've just been experiencing over the past 10 years. And this might not be directly related to climate change. This could just be a cyclical pattern, but regardless, over the last 10 years, this is how Augusts have looked. Generally warm in the west, cool in the east. And climatology can often be very powerful, sort of like the climate has some momentum, and so these patterns can persist. And I'm always leery of model forecasts that differ very substantially from climatology, because there's a good bet that if it happened, for instance, 8 out of the last 10 years, there's a good chance it could happen again. And that's what we saw during August. So let's hop into our 7-day forecast. This is the current situation with the smoke. You can see mostly clear skies over Oregon, which has been wonderful, and the smoke has been pushed south into California. And that's what we were anticipating. We had a couple of different factors that suggested that the smoke would move south of our area. We had a couple of cold fronts come through with some northwest flow pushing the smoke to the south and east, and that was because we went through some cooler MJO phases, MJO phase 1, and we had a rise in the Southern Oscillation Index about 18 days ago. So those were some cool signals, and that's why we called for the smoke to move out, and lo and behold, it has. Now, getting into our 7-day weather forecast here, we're still going to see a continuation for just the next day or two of those cooler temperatures, because we're still under the influence of that cooler MJO phase and the influence of that big SOI rise that we saw 2.5 weeks ago. However, you can see here the Weather Channel forecast for the next 10 days looks very warm indeed. And this will probably end up being our warmest stretch of the summer in terms of daytime maximum temperatures. Now remember, we're getting later into the fall, later into the summer, heading into the fall. So I don't think it will feel this hot for as long during the day, but these are pretty substantial temperatures for the end of August, heading into September. And one of the reasons why I think this heat wave is going to persist for a little while is because during the fall, the pressure pattern tends to elongate. So the wavelengths tend to elongate a little bit. And let's look at some maps so that I can show you what that looks like. This was our 500 millibar map a couple days ago. You can see here was one of the cold fronts that helped push the smoke out of our area. And you can see, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, this lines up very well with MJO Phase 1, which is where we were a couple days ago. And you can see the correlation for cooler temperatures over our part of the country. So that explains why it was a little cooler than normal over the past 5 or so days. And here's that SOI rise that I was talking about too. Again, there's an 18-day lag, so this happened at the early part of August, but it just kicked into effect a couple days ago. So that's what gave us those cooler temperatures. However, observe how it's been falling. And negative SOI is correlated with warmer than normal temperatures for our region. And you can see, here's the 500 millibar pressure pattern according to the European ensemble in a couple days. Pretty big flip. So what I was saying about this elongated wavelength pattern is that during the spring and summer, the wavelengths shorten. So what can happen is, even if we have a ridge in the Gulf of Alaska producing clear and sunny and warm weather, we can have a trough over the west coast, then a ridge over the central plains in the central part of the United States, and then another trough along the eastern seaboard. During the fall and winter, though, these wavelengths elongate, and so what happens is you're not able to have really a trough along the west and east coast simultaneously. Instead, you get more of this look, where the ridge is elongated, if you will, and then you have the trough either in the central part of the U.S. or pushing into the east. And so that's why I think this heat wave is going to be is somewhat longer lasting, just because of some seasonal changes that we're seeing. Now, the MJO is going to play a role in this too, because you can see we've moved out of Phase 1, and we're moving through Phase 2 into Phase 3, and here you can see the temperature correlation for Phase 3 during the month of September, August, September, and October. So very warm, and here you can see it wants to push the cool air and the trough into the east. And also, again, this is going to line up with our fall in the Southern Oscillation Index. Now, why do I think this heat wave isn't going to last forever? Last time we talked about how some models, like the CFSV2, were trying to keep the entire month of September very hot. And I disagreed with that, and I still do. And one of the reasons is because the SOI has continued its roller coaster ride over the summer, and it's popped right back up. And this happened around the second, third week of August. So we would expect these positive Southern Oscillation Index values to give us some cooler air around September 10th. So it's not going to last forever. In the meantime, though, we do have an extended period of time where we're going to be dealing with triple-digit temps, and the PNA is only going to reinforce that. You can see, though, there's a tendency here as we get into the 11th to 13th of September timeframe for the PNA to fall again. And you can see that the days of the heat wave are already numbered. So that is going to give some hope to all of you who don't like very warm weather. But look at that 500 millibar pressure pattern. This is an extremely strong ridging signal from the European ensemble for day 10. This is really remarkable. So let's talk about some other reasons why this isn't going to last the entire month. Because if you're like me and don't like extended periods of really hot weather, you need some hope. So you can see the MJO is going to continue to move into phases 4 and 5. And this is when we start introducing some chances for cooler air around September 10th to the 15th. Here's phase 4, and the temperature correlation for phase 4. Looks a little cooler along the west coast. Here's the temperature correlation for phase 5. Looks even cooler, and you can see the warmest air has moved into the central U.S. and the northern plains. And also, our SOI is going to help us as well cool things down, because we had these big positive anomalies around the 20th of August, and that's going to kick in around the 10th of September. And here you can see the models are hinting that this ridge could retrograde, so move farther west over the ocean and give us some northwest flow and cooler air. So speaking of that northwest flow, that's what moved the smoke out of our area last time. There's a chance that with this extended period of ridging and hot temperatures that the smoke could creep back in. And if that happens, it might stay around for a good part of this heat wave. And it might be that the smoke doesn't fully clear out again until this ridge moves off to the west around September 15th. We'll have to see how that plays out. Not a promise, but just a warning that that could happen. Here's the Canadian ensemble also showing that the ridge finally breaks and moves off to the west and is replaced by a trough September 13th. I like the timing of the Canadian. It's a little bit faster, and I think with the MJO moving into those cooler phases and the SOI, that this timing is a little bit better. I showed you this forecast from the CFSV2 monthlies last week, and I think this is overdone. For the entire month of September to have this ridge parked over the Pacific Northwest, I think that's unrealistic given the signals we're seeing from the MJO and the SOI and other things. The first half of the month is definitely going to be hotter than normal, but I don't think that's going to persist the entire month. We talked last time about our analogs, 2005 and 2016, so years that have evolved very similarly to this current year. And those years had a cooler than normal September. And again, our climatology, what's happened over the last 10 years, also suggests a cooler than normal September. Will our September be cooler than normal overall this year? I don't think so. I think it will probably end up as a wash given that heat wave over the first couple weeks of the month. However, I think we can look forward to some cooler air arriving for the second half of the month. So, quick checkup on our sea surface temperatures. Our La Nina is still developing. However, interesting to note that it's a little bit more of an east-based La Nina right now, with the coldest waters right off the coast of South America. In contrast, 2016, which is one of our analogs, was developing into a more central-based La Nina at this time of the year. Doesn't mean that our current situation couldn't end up looking like this. And this is significant because eastern-based La Ninas tend to put a little more cooler air into the eastern part of the United States. And those are actually a somewhat warmer risk for California and Southern Oregon, whereas central-based La Ninas give Southern Oregon and Northern California a better chance for colder and wetter conditions, along with Washington and British Columbia and the typical areas that do well in a La Nina season. Here's 2005 as well. So let's wrap up all of that information. August turned out very similar to the Augusts of the last 9 years, so not really a surprise there. Our smoke forecast did verify. We had those northwest winds kick the smoke out of the area, partially due to those MJO Phase 1 cold fronts and what the SOI was doing 2.5 weeks ago. It looks like we're going to have to endure multiple days of triple-digit temperatures over the next week, and once again, that's because of our primary drivers, MJO, going into phases 2 and 3, and that drop in the SOI, along with just seasonal changes that happen during the fall as those wavelengths at the 500 millibar level get longer, and that doesn't allow for as much of a trough along the west coast in this type of a pattern. And so perhaps the smoke returns for a time. However, I think this heat wave is going to break around the 10th to the 15th of September. Not quite sure on the timing yet, but we do have the SOI suggesting cooler air during this time frame. We do have the MJO hinting at cooler air, and our climatology and our analogs. So there are multiple reasons here, and some heavy hitters suggesting that we get a cooler shot of air during that second week of September. So the CFSV2, I think, is unrealistic to blowtorch the entire month. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to set your notifications for that next weekend update. And please leave a like if you enjoyed the forecast for today.